the 30th, 2024, and I'm still in Orlando, Florida. And as you can see, it's 1:53 p.m. Eastern Time. That's I guess that's 5:53 in London, and that's 5:52 Pacific Time. Yeah, it's 1:52 p.m. Afternoon, and it's March the 30th, 2024. And yeah, I would just like to provide that I actually did publish. I have published and stored a work paper. I authored it today, and I published it on scribd.com, www.scribd.com, scribd.com, and it's a work paper on the legal tenets of international intelligence and security community protocols and future world governments, GIA, Global Intelligence Agency. So that's negotiated by the Central Intelligence Agency, Interpol, and the United Nations Security Council for the most part. I'm pretty sure the General Assembly has assented to actually focusing on that gradually over the next 20 years or so. Okay, so I'm pretty sure we're going to have to call it the GIA. We're not going to have to divert from that at all. Okay, so, and the CIA will be able to evolve into more of a social activist, a media communication agency. It will cover, military activities, as one of the fundamental sector of the Central Intelligence Agency's operation and function. But it's going to be more so of a civil society aided agency. Is going to form a lot of partnerships with civil society all over the country and eventually over the world. But it's going to serve alongside Interpol and the United Nations as the foundation for the GIA, and it's going to serve as the support and the empowerment mechanism or vessel for the GIA into the future when it's formed, when the GIA is actually formed in 2044 upon world government of the United Nations. Okay, so I did publish that today, and yesterday I did publish. I did post on LinkedIn and published on scribd.com a work paper on the legal tenets of I guess I call it global and equal income. It's more so I don't want to say universal income per se, because not because of any copyrighted reason. Obviously, it's a concept that has been around for about a century now. Universal income. It was presented as one of the objectives of the Central Intelligence Agency from the get-go. It really was. Okay, said eventually we would get to a point of technology during the revolution that we had, the technological revolution that we had in the 1940s and 50s. It was a real revolution. Especially here in America per se. America became the wealthiest nation in the world by far in the 1950s. Our technology was considered quite shocking and awesome to the rest of the world. Okay, so we imagine, all the way back then, we literally imagined universal income in an age of technology and automation, when no one would actually have to do much physical work anymore, other than temporary or seasonal or emergency or as needed. And so I did detail that there needs to be a social associated with universal income. I'm pretty sure we're going to have universal income in maybe a century and a half. We're going to have foundational elements that we will be able to benefit from or enjoy as benefits over the next century and a half toward the complete manifestation of universal income, global and equal income for everyone, but allowing folks who work harder or contribute more to be able to earn social credit or social merit, toward having more based on their effort and not based on any sort of illusory or arbitrary stature or status. By this time there'll be an abundance of food, easy access to permanent housing, and we're not talking about a homeless shelter, anything of that nature. Even though homeless shelters and so forth will exist here and there for emergency situations, but for the most part, things will be so different in 150 years that makes a lot of sense, and it's part of our negotiation. We are working toward posterity, and so forth. We got to work toward perfection if we believe in the goodness of the nature of man and the goodness of God. If God is good, as that's my Father's promise. If I am good, if God is good, that's what everyone is supposed to believe. If God is good, there's no way God is going to allow us to live one life and never live another life, or never, or not be guaranteed to eventually end up in heaven. God would not be that mean to you guys, or to anyone. All right, to anyone, God would not be that mean to humanity. All right, that would be quite cruel. All right, so there's no reason to not believe in reincarnations and resurrection. There's no reason to not. There's no reason to not believe in it. Okay, so without me having to assert too much other than that, that's just And when I grew up, I did not have as a young child, I had to figure that out. I would sit there and I would say, well, if God was good, there is no way I would just die and that'd be it. What would be the point of having people be born to be rich and some born to be poor, and that just be it? That wouldn't make any sense. That would not be fair. That would not be logical. That would not be considerate of the senses that we do have, our psyche, our psychology, our emotional value, or it just would not make sense. Even as a small kid, I was very introspective. I remember thinking that, but the Essential Intelligence Agency at Interpol really did motivate me to be a strong thinker as a kid. I thought everything through. I thought humanistically ever since a very young age. I really thought these things through. All right, so by the time I got to the point of 12 years old in Antigua and Barbuda, I went to a CIA sponsored and endorsed. It used to be, based on CIA Interpol partnership, but essentially it's very much so a CIA operated academy, secondary school academy, high school academy in Antigua and Barbuda, St. Joseph's Academy, a Roman Catholic academy. Ever since 12 years old, I was equipped to be able to to start making foundational decisions on working toward integration, as a humanist from the very get-go. I remember reading on the Organization of American States and just being so fascinated by the idea. I read it over and over and over, damn near every day. Every day I kept reading it, especially after having read the whole encyclopedia. But I kept reading it over, and I was like, that's fascinating. This must be some sort of alluding to something, I remember thinking that. But I don't know why I thought it was so fascinating, but it always seemed fascinating to me. But anyway, so yeah, we've been working on this for a while. We're going to have a Union of the Americas in 2049, but yes, we're going to have the EAA in 2025, and we're going to have the General Assembly of the Americas in 2025. None of that has been debunked, and none of that is being discarded. All of that is all of what I've iterated will manifest, and it's not some sort of Nostradamus silly stuff. It's not any sort of Nostradamus silly stuff. We thought this through. We planned it, negotiated it with the rest of the world, and they said that's the only way Congress can be sure that our laws, in protecting our diplomacy and our national perspective, are supported, on an international level. We got to compound the support of our philosophy as Americans. So our alliance is going to be a modern age alliance, less military based, but our modern alliance with the CARICOM and Canada, as it's going to be quite formidable in the General Assembly of the Americas. It's going to make sure that we expand and extend American ethos, American policies throughout the Americas. It provides us better security, and yes, we're going to have a World Congress, the General Assembly of the United Nations, under the World Government of the United Nations, World Government, and we're going to have to work with Africa. We're going to be very steadfast in motivating change in Africa. We're going to American Africa over the next 30, 50 years quite much. All right, so it's going to provide us security and so forth. We're going to have Seychelles is going to be an associate state of the United States as well as the Commonwealth of Dominica. So guys, this is not arrogance at all. I'm actually exhausted, but I need everyone to know that the Central Intelligence Agency is quite confident in what we have planned. And in 20 years, we are going to be able to announce New York City. In all honesty, New York City is going to be announced as the global capital. All right? The world capital with that reputation acknowledged and signed and endorsed as being that by the whole world, the United Nations General Assembly, supported by treaty, the World Constitution and the Constitution of the world, and its government, or simply the Constitution of the world. Okay? So, that's what we are going to be blessed with. I guess by then everyone will have known that New York certainly deserves it, and not just for temporarily, but until the end of time. That's quite harsh that we had to get to this point. But Africa, Johannesburg, is runner-up. It almost won it, and we had to accept the judgment affirmed above as being the only way to secure that Americana is going to lead the world for the rest of until the end of time, and is to make sure that New York actually earns and keeps the world capital status, and not just headquarters of the United Nations without an evolved world government. Okay, so Washington, D.C. is going to naturally remain the federal capital, the capital city of the United States, the nation state itself. Miami is going to be the capital city of the Union of the Americas, meaning it'll be the focal point of delivering or articulating or enacting legislation and executive actions and so forth regarding specifically hemispheric issues, and it's gonna be based on the Constitution of the Americas, and below the Constitution of the Americas, the subtitle of the Constitution of the Americas is gonna say the Constitutive Treaty establishing the Union of the Americas. That might be one sector or one segment of the Constitution of the Americas. Okay, so that should be able to work out. All right, so guys, oh my God. Yes, so so the peculiarities that we're gonna that I've presented online, you guys can see on my LinkedIn documents catalog or script.com. Even on my Facebook account, you guys can see PDF copies of the documents. So it's a bit much, but you can see my website, my blog site, ShawnDexterJohn.wordpress.com. You can actually see it, and yes, it's viewable by the whole English-speaking world. We tested it all over the planet, secret communications, and it's visible by the whole world, English-speaking world, and all governments within the United Nations General Assembly. So it's not just in my mind, it's not just in my colleagues' minds. That is actually online, and it is actually viewable, observable. Okay, so you guys can see all of that on there. Okay, so so it's quite complex. What I've provided to the world is quite complex. But the world has a lot of work to do. The micro policies that I imagine, which are going to come from the United States government, all these different agencies, it's a lot of work. The micro policies of making sure that our partnership with the international community corresponds with not just the federal government, but the state governments, and not just the state governments, but the county governments, the city governments, and so forth. A lot of work that has to be done to make sure that everything matches up or supplement or complements each other. A lot of work. That's going to happen in Japan. That's going to happen in Great Britain. That's going to happen in France. That's going to happen in every African country for the most part, and so forth. In Europe, everywhere else. A lot of work. So folks are not going to get angry at me saying, well, it's his job to be able to lead the effort and write constitutions and this and this and that. But you guys are not going to get angry at me, in the long run. In the long run, you guys are not going to get angered at all in having the commissions that you guys are going to be given. Those folks are involved. All right? And the agents are going to do a good job at hiring the right folks to be able to articulate or debate the reason for a particular motive or objective or directive. So So yeah, we're gonna have a Native American president. We're gonna work to having a Native American president. Over the next 20 years. American president, president of the United States. That's what I mean. We're gonna have a Native American president of the United States. I'm pretty sure over the next 20, 30 years or so. All right. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of good things that we can do. Eventually, we're going to get to the second black president, and within the next 30, 40 years. So we're going to have a black president. I'm pretty sure we have negotiated with Mexico, having the first black president of Mexico, black, some sort of African, background or black background, meaning, African American background. Half or a quarter, but essentially, within half a century, So, or even earlier than that. But anyway, I'm pretty sure what we've negotiated. This individual is going to be quite young, and he's going to win under. He might win as vice president under emergency order. If a death is assassinated just for diplomatic reasons. Toward making sure that the open borders of the Americas is not going to create any sort of tension. We're going to need certain sort of catapult actors or catapult political actors in government throughout the Americas who are going to allow social, political, economic, racial, ethnic integration and so forth to be as safe as possible. So we're going to negotiate with the government of Mexico. And so forth, and that the president of Mexico, might only serve one term, or maybe even being deceased, eventually getting deceased with that first term for security reasons. We do understand the risk with that. So, but yeah, we're gonna ease the world into a cosmopolitan sort of global community. All right, so yes, so we're gonna liberalize Africa. The fundamental and complemental rights we do have here in the United States of America, the African Union is going to take up. As the Constitution of Africa, it's going to provide, African principles in a modern era backed by the American government in secret. That's what the Constitution of Africa is. We're going to make sure that Africa is safe, completely safe, in becoming the global economic power, global economic continental power on the planet until the end of time. The lead. China is going to be the economic superpower of the Asia Pacific. The United States is going to remain the global superpower as a nation state, the economic superpower of the Americas. Germany is going to evolve into becoming the economic power of Europe, and India is going to become a superpower. It's going to be the neocontinental superpower of the future West Asia Union. Okay, so that's what we have planned. South Africa will be the economic powerhouse on the African continent. Nigeria will be able to back it up eventually, but South Africa is going to move clearly forward and lead as economic, social, and political power, lead power on the African continent. All right. And Australia, Australia is going to work on a new flag. The Australian people, they're going to work on a new flag. They presented a model before. I think it's a beautiful green flag that we've seen before. It's now traditional with the Australian people. But yeah, so the Aborigines are putting forth that flag, presented it as the future flag of Australia. Australia is going to be the political lead of the Asia Pacific. It's going to have the capital city of the Asia Pacific, Sydney, and the civil society is going to be quite pronounced in Australia. Quite pronounced. It's going to be quite pronounced, to be honest with you. And we have a project of the rise of the Aborigine, Australian Aborigine. We're going to do away with the standard and the custom of poverty in the Aborigine community. So we're going to have to do away with that poverty and stagnation and discrimination. In all honesty, so we're going to have to do away with that. It's a project that we have in the Asia Pacific.